Welcome to the Golf for Good podcast, where we bring you the stories behind the climbs, the causes, and the people who make it all possible. In this episode, we explore Golf for Good's unique blend of adventure and philanthropy with Chairwoman Kat Kersey and co-founder Brian Wilkie. They'll be sharing insights into the organisation's inception, its impact over the years, and the power of combining physical challenges with charitable causes. Welcome, both of you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, let's start with origins and visions. So, Brian, you were co-founder of Golf for Good in 2001, so 24 years ago. Can you tell us about the inspiration for founding Golf for Good?
Well, it actually started the year before, in 2000, when a friend of mine, Paul Oliver, who was then chairman of the junior version of Rotary, said that he'd been asked, or Rotary had been asked, to raise money for an ambulance for Namibia, which had been recently war-torn, and there were a lot of poor people with no medical facilities. And did I have any ideas on how to raise the money for the ambulance? And I recall that he had once climbed Kilimanjaro. So I suggested that we put a group together to climb Kili. Everybody would get sponsored. All the profits would pay for the ambulance. And he thought that was a good idea, so we met, discussed it all. The first thing, at that time, there were no licensing arrangements for charities, so we needed to get a patron. And we were lucky enough, through a friend of mine, Maurice Flanagan, who then ran Emirates, to be introduced to the chairman of the Emirates group, Sheikh Ahmed bin Saeed Al Maktoum, who kindly agreed to be our patron and is still patron to this day, which is great. And he's been really helpful to us in many ways. I had a spare room in my office, so that became the Golf for Good office. We asked for people to help us. Another friend, Vanessa Jackson, agreed to be our administrator on a far lower salary than she would normally get working. And that's been a trend that's continued, I think, Kat, right the way through the year.
Yeah.
We've had some great staff. And we had one press release, just one. The Khaleej Times and Gulf News turned up a couple of days later. We did a small press conference with them. And that's all we needed in those days. Marketing has changed hugely. There was no social media. There were no smartphones in those days even. So we had that small press conference and 49 people signed up to climb Kili, which is what we were. In fact, 50
Wow.
signed up, one had to drop out. And so Paul and I each led a group. 44 of the 49 got to the top, which I think was a record at the time for any group. And we said, well, this is really working. So we then planned the future. The next one was a charity hiking, cycling and kayaking in Thailand for orphanage in Bangkok, followed by Everest Base Camp the next year, and we were off and running.
Amazing.
Let's say 24 years later and 120 challenges or something like that, Kat?
Yeah, exactly.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's been a
And I
journey.
love that it started with Kili because we're off to Kili in 3 months.
Brilliant.
It's coming back around. That's so exciting.
Well, the interesting thing was that it wasn't just about the challenge. Right from the beginning, and we put it in our first brochure, the aims were, there was 4. One was to bring Gulf residents together in a good cause, and a charity community, if you like. One was to show people that they could push their limits and do far more than they thought they could. Another one was to help people get fit. Because a lot of people say, oh, I've done nothing since I played football or netball as a kid at school. And I'm now 45 and I'm carrying too many kilos, and et cetera, et cetera. So this is a good goal. You know, if you're going to do Kili, you better be reasonably fit.
Yes.
So we always say 3 months and you can get anybody fitness. And the fourth, of course, was to do a lot of good in the world. And that gradually evolved, particularly into children. And I think we've achieved those aims over the year. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, we have. Let's talk to you, Kat, about your journey with Golf for Good. So you're our wonderful chairwoman. How did you end up here?
Well, my Golf for Good journey started in 2007. I was living in Dubai. I'd been in Dubai for about 2 years at that point. I was in a pretty unhappy relationship. I'm going to overshare now, sorry. And I was kind of looking for a way out, and I came across an advert, I think it was in Choi Trims or Spinneys, on the wall for Everest Base Camp, and it had Golf for Good branding on it. And I think I then saw it again in Time Out Dubai, and I thought, this is a great opportunity to get away for a couple of weeks, do something that I thought sounded so amazing, different, completely different. I had never really done, I had done some hiking before. I have kind of a slight military background from my university years in the UK, but I hadn't done anything for a while. And I essentially signed up, and the challenge was leaving, I think 4 or 5 weeks later. So in true cat fashion, because I have a bit of a history of doing this, zero training, found myself in the pre-challenge briefing, signed up for Everest Base Camp, and got exactly what I intended to get, which was the most incredible 2 weeks with 25 other challengers who became some of my best friends. Time to reflect, think, walk, and just, it's such a therapeutic experience, hiking, especially hiking with Golf for Good for a good cause, in the Himalayas, especially because it's such a magical place. Came back from there, left my relationship, and changed my life forever. So that was kind of my first exposure to Golf for Good. I fell in love with the charity immediately, fell in love with the charity project we were supporting in Nepal. And then from a distance, just loved and admired Golf for Good, wanted to get involved, but was a bit, just life took over. And I guess meeting them, my husband, having children kind of took priority for a few years. And then I came across an advert for a challenge director in 2018 and applied, thinking, you know what, I really want to get involved, give back, help support this wonderful charity that I'd kind of been just watching from afar, and ended up interviewing for the role. And then they actually created a role, which at the time was the wonderful Anne Edmondson, who was Brian's successor, was the chairwoman. And she created a director of strategy role for me, and I came in that capacity, which was much more aligned with my skill set. And that kind of rest is history. I joined the board, and about 5 years later, took over as chairwoman from Anne when she retired and moved to Bali.
Excellent, excellent. We're so lucky to have both of you, Golf for Good. Thank you so much. So looking back to your very first days with Golf for Good, and Kat, when you became involved with Golf for Good, how would you say the mission and approach has changed since its inception?
Do you want to start and I'll evolve?
Well, I think the biggest thing is one I referred to earlier, that communications and marketing was much easier in those days to spread the word.
Yeah.
I mean, as you said, you saw a poster in Spinneys or whatever it was.
Yeah.
A press release almost guaranteed it appearing in the newspapers, which everybody read, because there was no Instagram or Facebook or whatever else.
Or podcast studios.
Or podcast studio, yeah, podcasting, what's that? So it was easy to get the message out, and they're probably, even though Dubai was a lot smaller, I mean, it's probably only 1 million people in those days compared with the 4 million almost it is now. There was a lot closer communication because there were fewer channels to go through. So it made it easier to tell people what we were doing. And of course, challenges spread the word. Once people had had the story like cats, or they'd suddenly got fit, or they'd been on a challenge, because I can guarantee one thing: when you do a challenge, and all our challenges go to the charity we're supporting, and when you've had a little kid take you by the hand and drag you to her new bed and says, "That's my new bed, my first ever bed, and I've never weed on that before," you know. That came out wrong. I need to read it. So when you've had a little 6-year-old drag you by the hand to their bedside and say, "That's my new bed, I don't wee on that one," because they were orphans, they'd had a traumatic background. Well, that changes your life, and it changes the way you look at life, because you suddenly realise count your blessings isn't just an empty phrase. It's a phrase that many people can't use each day because they don't have any. So when you can do that and change other people's lives, it changes you as well. And I think that's probably the biggest single thing that most people will say they've got out of Golf for Good over the years.
Yeah, and we've had to evolve, you know, as Brian was saying, like the landscape that we're operating in now is so different from what it was in 2001. And not just marketing. There's, we have many more competitors out there, adventure training companies, etc. But we're still the only organisation there that take people to do amazing challenges where they change their lives, but they're also changing the lives of the children that we support. So that USP remains in place, which is amazing. But we've had to navigate around, many competitors entering the market. We had to navigate around, marketing channels, expanding, all of that. We've had to navigate through COVID and kind of adjust our operating model, adjust the way that we work, start kind of virtual challenges when we weren't able to go internationally or even outside at one point. So the whole way of operating at Golf for Good has really, really changed. Back in, I want to say like 2017, 2018, we launched hiking in the mountains as a way of preparing people for the challenges that they go on, because as Brian said, fitness is so important. But I would also just caveat that most of our challenges are mental strength. If you can mentally get up a mountain, it doesn't matter what your fitness is like, you need to mentally keep going. So for me, one of the big things, and people always say, I could never do Kilimanjaro, I could never do Everest Base Camp. I was like, you absolutely can. If I can do it, you can definitely do it, because I have done, sorry, Brian, no training for any challenge I've ever been on. And I am not the fittest
The eye
person.
roll
I know,
right there.
I know. Probably.
We got that on camera.
No, actually the opposite. Because of doing challenges, I started getting into fitness, and now I do triathlons. So
Wow.
it wasn't the other way around. It was
Yeah.
starting to get fit because of this and then continuing on the journey. And I think, again,
That's
that's
great.
true of quite a few people.
Oh, 100%. And I would say that a challenge is much more enjoyable if you are fitter. But it is still possible to get to the top of a mountain if you are mentally able to cope with the pain. But so anyway, I've lost my train of thought. But essentially, we have navigated through quite a big landscape change within Dubai, Middle East, etc. And I feel like we're quite a different organisation to the one that you founded.
Yeah, we've had to be in many ways. Well, for example, as I said earlier, when we started, all we had was a letter of support from our patron, Sheikh Ahmed. A few years later, the International Humanitarian City started. We had to get licenses for that. Then an organisation called IACAD for charity affairs. You had to get permission for fundraising. You had to go through them, so that a lot more paperwork is needed now than ever was before. So for Force, you've got more staff needed and more organisation and, dare I say it, bureaucracy that you have to get through to actually get the challenge off the ground and prove to everybody concerned that you are a proper, trustworthy, reliable organisation with proper accounts that are published every year and all this sort of thing, which we didn't have to do before.
Yeah, that's very true, and it is something we have to navigate, but all for good reason. We totally understand that, and now International Humanitarian City that Brian just mentioned has also evolved over the years. They've now just rebranded to Dubai Humanitarian, and they've become a real strategic partner of ours, which is wonderful actually, that we have this really close relationship where they're kind of counselling us, guiding us on the best ways to work to maximise the amount of money that we can raise for our charities.
And I personally seen that. I've seen you in meetings with Dubai Humanitarian, and I can see that relationship there. And you're coming together for the bigger good, right?
Yeah.
Like you have one goal in mind.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your challenges. So you've touched on challenges that you have done. Can you tell me about challenges that you feel has been the most impactful that you've done or Golf for Good has done? Who's going to go first?
I think
Brian?
for me, probably the best was the very first one, because I was leading the first group up Kilimanjaro. My idea of leading is you stay at the back, because anybody's got problems, they're going to drop back through the group and they're weak or sick or had a twisted ankle, whatever. So I was at the back and waiting while the back markers, a few dropped out, 2 or 3, but everybody else had to get to the top. So I got to the top probably 45 minutes after the first lot had got there. And it was difficult because it's 6,000 meters or 5,500 at the lower summit. It was cold. It was a struggle. We hadn't done it before, altitude and everything else. And as I was walking around on my own, because everybody else had gone ahead from the lower summit to the higher summit, I suddenly thought, I can't do this anymore. I've had enough. I can't finish. I've got to the lower summit. I get the T-shirt for that anyway. But I'm going to just sit here on a rock for 5 minutes, get my breath back and go down. And as I was sitting there, I suddenly thought, Wilkie, you're the silly idiot who gave everybody the pep talk last night. You're the one who said to everybody, when you think you're finished, you're not, and you can always do more, and the only limits you have are inside your own head. I thought, oh, damn. Okay, well, after saying all this to everybody else, all right, I'll carry on going.
Live
And I
your
stood up, and as
words.
soon as I started walking again, I was fine. And I met a group of the others who'd already got to the top summit coming down, and I said, I'm fine. And that taught me a huge lesson, which I've never forgotten, which is that it's true. Your limits are inside your own head. You can always do more than you think you can.
Yeah.
Your body will fool you into saying, oh, I'm not sure about this. I'm tired, I'm cold, I'm fit, I've had it. You can always do more if the goal is worthwhile. And that's a great thing about what we do. And I think we're unique in the world at setting these challenges all over the world for the kids. That you've got two goals. The goal is to do whatever you're accomplishing physically, and the other goal is to help the kids. And if people have sponsored you to do something, you really owe it to them as well. And so there's a bit of internal pressure as well as the external pressure. But that's the biggest thing I learned through any of the challenges. You can always do more, and you should do more.
All right, I'm going to absolutely just destroy that whole story. Sorry.
You can see we did rehearse this.
I'm really going to regret this story. So I had,
Go on, we're
I've
ready.
never talked to you about that, and I have such the same experience. So I completely echo what you say about staying at the back and how important that is as someone who's repping a challenge. So I actually wasn't repping Kili when I did Kilimanjaro, Anne was, and Nabil. And there was a big group of us as well. We were 45 people, which is a very big group to go.
One group.
One group,
Oh.
yeah. We learned a lot of lessons on that challenge. Anyway, I had got kind of the group had separated up the mountain because as you climb, you know, it's tough. People slow down, and I had got stuck behind kind of a slower group, and my husband, who I almost got divorced from as a result of this next part that I'm going to tell you, was ahead of me, and just because of being stuck, and at the time you can't really cross. It's not the kind of mountain you can just run up and catch up people because you're obviously at such high altitude. So I was kind of behind, but I was in front of the slower people. I managed to pass them, but I couldn't catch up with the group who'd got to the top. 41 of us made it to Gilman's, which is the lower peak that Brian mentioned earlier. And then by the time I got there, because of the pace being so much slower, the sun had risen, and the group who'd gone on to Huru, which is the highest peak of the highest part of the mountain, had gone. And I was way behind, and I was also on my own. And it's extremely hard to keep going when you're alone, especially on Kili. That mountain is tricky. It's really hard. So I started on my own around the rim of the crater towards the Huru, and there's a point that you reach before called Stella. And I was just with one porter, and he was amazing, really helping me, but I just mentally couldn't continue. I sat down, as you did,
Wow.
and had a think to myself, and it broke me. I was a bit broke. I might cry. Oh my God, I'm not going to cry. But I was a bit broken by that point. We'd been walking. It had taken us about 8.5 hours to get to the top, which is longer than normal because the pace was so slow. And I didn't have it in me to continue on to Uhuru. And I thought the same thing. I've got the certificate. I've got to the top of Kili, and I can't. And I turned back. And that is the biggest regret of my life, because now I have to go back to Kilimanjaro and I have to do it again. And I have to go to the Huru and have that conversation. I know.
Wow, isn't that interesting?
And I absolutely will do it. It's something that is within me that I have to do that. I think I'm going to maybe wait until my children are old enough and we do it together as a family. Maybe I might go with Gulf for Good. It is a mountain that is, I mean, I know people who've done it twice, even 3 times, and I have full respect for those people. But that changed my life in a way that since that moment and turning around and going back down and living with that regret, I have never said or stopped or said no to anything beyond that, because I know how much I will regret that. And I feel I'm just gutted that I didn't have the dialogue that was as strong as Brian's in the dialogue to say, shut up, get on with it.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Living,
Keep going.
yeah, that's great. So you've learned to live now without regrets, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I will never make that mistake again, ever.
Yeah.
And on any challenge that I've ever done since, I do everything. I don't miss anything. Like we went to Peru to do the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. And behind the sacred site is Huayna Picchu, which is the vertical climb of the iconic mountain that you see.
Yep.
I was very nervous about doing that because I'm not great with heights. And it looked very, very steep. But actually, that was one of the most enjoyable days of my life. And I was like determined, no, I'm definitely not going to come to Peru and not do that and make that mistake that I did before. So yeah, now, no regrets, never turn back, keep going. I completely agree. It's all mental. Your body can put up with so much more than you think it can.
I love
Amazing
that.
we had almost identical
Yeah,
experiences.
I didn't know that.
Well,
There you go,
okay.
you're living there.
So let's talk about the criteria for choosing charity projects. So is there particular regions we focus on? Do we, how do we do it? Talk us through it.
Well, when we first started, we thought, right, let's choose charities in good charities and find challenges around them. We found it didn't actually work. People get excited by the challenge first and then the charity later. So to get people to come, especially these days when there's, as Kat said, a lot more competition out there, you need to find challenges that will excite people, that will press their buttons, that they want to go on, like Kili or, for example, one of the first ones we did was cycling across Thailand. Now, so many people have been to Thailand on holiday that it doesn't excite them so much anymore. The challenge is still there. It's still as big. The charity is still there in Bangkok, wonderful charity that I still support to this day. But people won't go to Thailand. So you have to find things that will excite them and then look for challenges in that area, but look for charities in that area that are worthwhile supporting. And then we have criteria that they have to meet for that. So
Yeah, so I can take that. So now what we do, so we have a long list of kind of things that we look at, and we have a charter that we ask our charities to complete and send to us. Every charity that we work with is children focused. They are why we exist, to help children in the developing world. The whole premise of Dubai Humanitarian and why they exist is to take money from this region and share it with developing nations where there isn't so much. So we just fully support that agenda, which is wonderful. And that's why I think we're partnering so well. So all of our charities are physically where we do our challenges, as Brian said, and that remains the case for now, is that people are excited by the challenge. So we need to find charities that are situated in a kind of realistic proximity to where those challenges take place. At the same time, we make sure that all of our charities have gone through at least 2 audit cycles so that we know that they're fully authorised to operate where they're operating, and fully they're basically, what we try to do is make sure that if we were to have to step away for whatever reason, that charity could exist without us still. But so for that reason, we tend to fund capital expenditure rather than ongoing operational costs. They need to show that they've got sustainable kind of policies and processes in place, so that they're not going to, abandon the children that they're currently either housing or educating. And then we go through an application process, and the projects are always time bound. So they've got a start and an end date, so that we can also make sure that we have various checks in place and we can see that the money is being spent where we were told it was going to be spent. And that's why we have this ongoing partnership with our charities. Almost all of them we've worked with for a number of years, because the need to go back and to show to show the people who've donated or who fundraise our challenges that their money's gone to the place that they were raising it for is it's so important. And it's also just wonderful to see how we're impacting the children on the ground that we're supporting, and to have those relationships last beyond a challenge cycle is really important for us as well.
Absolutely.
If I can add one thing onto that, as Kat said, it's always a capital project. So it could be a bit of equipment, it could be an ambulance. Usually it's something like a classroom or a new home for an orphanage, whatever. But we say to them, we need to see 3 quotations for the building. We will get that approved independently, whichever one is chosen. And then we will, it's just like a building company here, a contractor, will give so much money up front, say 25% when the foundations are dug, another 25 when the building's completed, and the rest on completion, so that you can track the funds right the way through. And certainly, as long as I was chairman, that was 17 years, we could check on every dirham we'd ever spent. So we knew none had disappeared into somebody's pocket. Because at the end of the day, this is the third world. And there's people out there looking at these rich folks coming from Dubai, thinking, oh, how can we get some of that money into our pockets? So you have to, we've always said, charity depends on two things. You've got to have a warm heart and a cool head. So a warm heart to make you want to do it, and a cool head to make sure it's done the way that it should be done.
Yeah.
So.
And I can absolutely vouch for that thing you were saying about capital. I had a trip with Golf for Good last year to Ethiopia, and it was wonderful to see, Golf for Good had already funded part of the school, and the second or third part of the funding, we were now building more classrooms. And that was really wonderful to see those different milestones coming together.
Yeah, and you can see that at the majority of our charities, which is so wonderful. When we went to, again, Kilimanjaro, so the classrooms that we've been building there at a school called Enduro, it's just, you can see there's like buildings that have been fully funded by Golf for Good, and they've grown, and they've put in toilets for children who've got disabilities and things like that. And all parts of that project have been funded by Golf for Good, which is just such an amazing thing to witness. It really is.
Absolutely wonderful. The power of adventure. So can you share a memorable story where an adventure challenge led to a positive outcome?
Got a wonderful one. When we did Annapurna Circuit, this is about 2010, 2012, which to me is probably the toughest challenge I've ever been on, because you get to the same sort of heights as Kili, but it's much longer. It's a 2-week challenge with lots of snow and ice and that sort of thing. It's a tough challenge. Anyway, on about the second day, we're walking along. There's a group of 20, I think, doing that challenge. And you're walking along a mountain path, which got a fairly steep drop to a river hundreds of feet below. The path had been swept away by a landslide the day before we got there. So they made a makeshift path across this landslide. It was probably 100 yards or so. But it was quite narrow. And, oops, okay, right, let's go and do it. So half the group got across, and then suddenly one of the guys with us, Richard, and he won't mind me telling this story, turned out, we didn't know, but he did have a bit of a fear of heights, and he got halfway across and he froze. He just couldn't get any further. And he'd gone past the most difficult part of the trail, very difficult for him to go back. And I was just thinking, right, I better get out there and help him across. And suddenly a woman from the other side, Rima, came back. She'd already gone through. She came back to get him, and she got to him, talked reassuringly to him for a couple of minutes, got him to take her hand, and she gradually led him across. And over the rest of the challenge, the next 10 days, they got closer and closer together, and they became an item. Richard was about to retire. Rima was working for the British Embassy in Abu Dhabi. They got closer together, they got engaged, and the following year they married.
Oh, that is so lovely.
Right? I love this.
Perfectly true. And it was just wonderful for all of us, because we all saw the relationship evolving. They'd both been married before. I thought, well, who knows, second love. And they're still together and still happy to this day.
That's
a
wonderful.
great story.
Wow.
She saw his weakness, recognised it. He lent on her. Since then, she'd had problems. And she lent on him, etc. It's a perfect story.
Yeah, that's lovely. Honestly, I can, like the environment that you're in on these challenges bonds you forever.
Yes.
So I feel like on every single challenge that I've ever been on, I've made another best friend, because you are probably having to pee next to each other at some point.
Eat next to each other, sleep next to each other, snore next to each
Snoring, you name it. You're freezing cold for a lot of the time. And so it really is like pushing you to your limits. And that is just something that makes for really great friendships, really great relationships.
Well, the first challenge, or the only challenge we ever did together, was Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah.
And that day coming down the hill, with the mud was thick. It was so thick it actually pulled off one of my boots, which remained in the mud. I had to hold back and put. So everybody finished the day wet, cold, muddy boots, and then they built a fire.
They did.
And we were all huddling around the
fabulous.
fire, and somebody started singing Kumbaya or something. Suddenly we all joined in. I mean,
And
after
Brian
day
had a
like
box
that,
of wine that we happened to open
Yes,
at that
yes,
time.
yes.
So
got finished as well.
morale in a box.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
Love that.
You really do bond. I
you
think.
do. You do. It's
Really.
fab.
I think you've got a story, Kat, about somebody that was part of a charity and then became a guide. What's that?
Oh, my
What's that
wonderful
about?
Effie.
Effie. Oh, my gosh. So I did the Inca Trail in 2023. It was my 40th birthday challenge for myself. And it's something I'd wanted to do for such a long time, go to Peru, see Machu Picchu. And we obviously with Golf for Good, we had a group of us sign up. And I didn't know this story at the time, but then we had the briefing and then we got onto the ground and started the wonderful trek in the steps of the Incas. And our guide was a chap called Effie, Efrain Valles, but Effie for short. And he just has this real magical quality about him where he would tell us these incredible stories about his ancestors, the people of the Inca, like just wonderful. And he was enthralling in the way that he would tell these stories. And then over the time that we spent with him, he revealed to us that he had actually been one of the orphans that was at the school that we were supporting, and it was our charity that we were there. So when he was little, he was essentially adopted by the woman who ran the orphanage. It was a boys' school, a boys' orphanage before it's now subsequently become a girls' school. And so he was adopted by the woman that ran it, educated there, he lived there, and had basically trained himself or got himself qualified as a guide, and had now started running treks to Machu Picchu and all over Peru. And that was just amazing to be there with somebody who's been a beneficiary of one of the charities that we're supporting. And it's kind of come full circle. He went on to win World's Best Guide in
I love
2018,
that.
I think it was. Yeah, absolutely amazing. I can completely understand why as well, because he is just such a special person. And then when we went to the charity, as part of obviously the challenge, you always go to visit the charity that you're supporting, to see the kids there interact with him in the way that they did, that he obviously spends so much time there and invests time giving back to them still. And you can just see and feel the closeness and the bond in that community. So just to witness all of that was so special. And you can really see the impact that the causes that we're supporting actually kind of, could come full circle to end up being people who are working on the ground and taking people on challenges. Amazing.
Well,
But I'm not sure you know that it wasn't coincidental. Effie was an assistant guide when I first did, the only time I did the Machu Picchu Trail.
Yeah.
18 years before you did it, and he was only assistant guide. When I went back a few years ago with my wife just to go to Machu Picchu, we didn't do the Inca Trail.
Did you get the train?
We got the train, yeah,
Fun.
both ways, and which is brilliant. But the charity that we had supported previously, run by an Australian woman, had closed.
Yeah.
So I said, I'd like to do Machu Picchu again, but do we know the charity? And Effie was the one who said, well, actually,
No.
there's this girls' school I know of, and I know they're looking for funds and they want to expand. So he took Sammy and I there to the school on a Saturday. It was closed, but they managed to get it opened up. We had a look around. He explained to me, and I think the only person there was a caretaker, what they wanted to do. And I said, that's great. So when I came back, I put it to the board. And
Yeah, and as that
So-
went,
yeah,
so is it
so-
Elaine who picked that up and
yes,
ran with
and he was
oh
the
my
one.
gosh.
He was the one who actually suggested the school.
Didn't even know that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Love
Well,
that.
fair play.
Yeah.
And,
Love
and
that.
that's
A
also
brilliant guy.
amazing that he's kind of taken that initiative to help support someone that supported him.
So
Yeah.
he's done so much for his own community as well.
He
And he's a
has.
hero in
Incredible.
his community, not
He
just for
is.
winning the award, but for all the good that he's done.
That's what you can feel.
Yeah.
He is adored. But he's just adding so much value there, and it's so
Incredible.
wonderful to see somebody have such impact.
Yeah.
It's really lovely.
Incredible. Looking back over the years, how has the Golf for Good community evolved? Can you tell me a little bit about that? Obviously, we started with Kilimanjaro, and now we do those wonderful challenges and so much more. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different community, I would
Yeah, I
think.
mean, we started just with challenges. But they got more and more difficult to get the numbers for the reasons we've given earlier. So
Yeah.
I think I'll hand over to Kat here, but we started doing other ways of raising funds and the
Yeah.
volunteering and so on. So
Yeah, and I think also the community in Dubai has changed as well. Like the profile of people who are living in this country, in this city, is different to the one it was in 2001. But so as an organization, we have evolved. So and our community has evolved with that. So as well as the challenges that we still run internationally, we are running volunteer challenges. So there are people who don't necessarily want to climb to the top of Kilimanjaro. Crazy people that they are.
That's me.
Well,
That is me.
and that's
I
fair
jump on
enough.
any volunteer challenge.
And that's fair enough. I totally get it. So we've started volunteer challenges.
Yeah.
And we also
Which
want,
are fantastic, by the way.
and they
Incredible
are,
experiences.
They really are. They're very special in a different way. They still change your life, but you get time with the charity that you don't get on a challenge.
Yeah.
Because you are working with the teachers or the carers on the ground. So you get to know them and to see behind the scenes, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's particularly special about those volunteer challenges is I got to go with my twin boys, with my 6-year-old
Yeah.
boys. So to be able to go and do the experiences with your children brings a whole
100%.
other level to it. Memories to last a lifetime.
But that's exactly it. So our community now involves children actually more than ever before. And it's wonderful having children, supporting children. Like you, Natalie, I've taken my kids to our charities, and we've been to Malawi and to Uganda. And it's just that kind of side of things where you get to open your own child's eyes to how other children are living in the world is just priceless. It's amazing for them to see that and to see how their kind of relationships and friendships evolve and how they just, kids are so malleable and so, it's just wonderful. I'm watching my son play football and organise a football tournament with the kids in Uganda, watching my daughter washing clothes in the river with other kids. Like, it's just, that's kind of priceless. So kids and involving children is one way our communities evolve for sure. And we have family-friendly hikes that children can come on with us at the weekends as well, which is also very different. So I'd say that we've become a little bit more, we've tried to, I guess, be a bit more, what's the word? I guess diversified a little bit. And our community isn't necessarily very fit people who are hiking all the time. It is people who also just want to give back and go and visit and spend time volunteering at our charities. And then so through the hiking, I think that's become a real focus and again, kids on the hikes. And then I think, we're looking at Dubai and how Dubai's evolved since we launched our gala ball that we run annually. That's also kind of a different evolution, I think, of our community, really.
Well, I always said, with the first challenge, I said it's a great way to raise money as an alternative to the black tie balls that everybody goes to. Now we have our own anyway.
We do.
And it's the biggest fundraising event of the year, and it's hugely enjoyable.
It is. It really is. And I think that's another way of just bringing another side of the community in. So we have loads of partners, companies from around the UAE and Dubai who want to work with us and partner with us. And that's such an amazing opportunity for them to get involved. And it really helps us sustain our own existence as well, which is also something we need to do.
Absolutely.
So that's also part of it.
Absolutely. We're almost out of time, and we're going to do a whole other episode on partnerships and corporate partners, because I think there's so much we can talk about there as well. Before we go, let's just talk about upcoming projects. So anything upcoming? I know we haven't released 2026 challenges yet. Any challenges coming up for the rest of 2025 that either of you are particularly excited about or going on?
Well, I'm excited about all of them, but I have to be. That's my job. But I'm going to Madagascar, which I'm so excited about. It's our first sailing challenge, so maybe one for the people who don't want to walk. Just saying. But yeah, so we're going to be sailing on what I keep describing affectionately as Moana style boats between the islands around Madagascar, raising money for the most incredible charity in Nosy Be, which is a school that helps support children who've got quite significant disabilities. So really amazing charity. So I'm very excited about that. We have our usual challenges running. So we are running Kilimanjaro. This year we're running Machu Picchu. We've got an amazing group for Machu Picchu this year, and I'm Very jealous because I think that's probably my favourite challenge that I've
That's
ever
full,
done.
isn't it? The group.
It is. It's sold out,
Yeah.
which is great.
But with more inquiries, you could potentially run a second group.
We could.
Yeah.
So
When is
keep them coming. It's in July.
Oh, yeah, we've got time for a second
yeah.
group, so come on.
Yeah,
Get your names
yeah,
in.
we
Yeah.
do. And then my husband is actually repping Everest Base Camp this year. So
Wow.
I feel like that's also really wonderful that he's repping my first ever challenge with Golf for Good. And I really want to join him on that. But there's only so many days leave I can take from work, and I need to prioritize. And because I've done it, I'm gonna do Madagascar instead.
And Brian, anything for you?
Only Mount Kenya, which we, Kat doesn't know this yet, found a really great charity last week in Nairobi in the slums, Kibera. So I hope that's going to run in February next year.
Excellent.
We haven't done Mount Kenya before. It's quite different to Kilimanjaro. It's much more scenic. It's a little bit lower, but it's still tough. And it's something I've wanted to do ever since we did Kili. So I'm really looking forward to that one as well. And to the Gulf for Good Ball in June.
Yes.
No,
absolutely.
24th of May.
Sorry, it's 24th of May. It is in the diary, but thank you very much. It's 24th of May. So it's only a month away, so go and buy your tickets
Yes,
now.
not long
it
at all.
is.
Not long at all. Thank you both so much for joining us today. We're so lucky to have both of you on the Golf for Good team, and you know the incredible work you both do. Thank you so much for everything.
No, thank you, Natalie, for giving up your time for this.
Yeah,
as well.
thank you,
Much
Nat.
appreciated.
For those interested in joining an adventure or supporting a cause, visit golfforgood.org to learn more.